Wichu, Nawado Kunokhale than Dahanagis Chalaki, Hanianuya. Oh, my peoples, my peoples. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, whichever part of the globe that gets this message. Peace and blessings. I'd like to thank and give praise to the Creator for life, for prosperity, for being able to just, be on social media, to have a voice, the inspiration that I get from other people, first and foremost, God Himself. I'd like to say that without God, nothing is possible. With Him, everything is possible. OCO, CO, anti-socialist, Shelly, I see you. I just wanted to start out by saying it's been a while since I've been on here, and I started to almost hang it up for a while because I want to get into the crux of what I want to really entertain today, and the conversations that I want to, or should I say the subject matter, dealing with the Bible, the scriptures, particularly, religion or not, it doesn't really matter to me, because I go by the blueprint of what I have studied and investigated. Let me tell you something. In life, I don't care what you're engaged in, for your livelihood, you have to become a master or someone who is knowledgeable of that which you are engaged in for your livelihood. In other words, you have to study, you have to research, and you have to work hard to get a return on that which sustains your life and your food on your table, roof over your head. And sometimes that's not enough for some people with the simple things. When I say simple, I mean just everyday jobs, people who work in department stores, supermarkets, people who work in the corporate environment at the lowest, from the mail clerks, to people who just stamp, letters and, things of that nature. Just people who are on the lowest part of the totem pole. You still have to have a knowledge of that which you do in order for you to survive in this world, because you're not going to get into any kind of workforce anywhere if you cannot be trained or programmed to do the job that's required of you in order for you to get a return, which is what? Your pay. What does that have to do with Bible or scriptures? Well, it's a correlation, because when I look at my life, and I think about this quite often, history, because of my adoption, I wanted to find out who my family was, where, and it led me in a direction where I wanted to become a private investigator, which I did go to school for and I got my diploma, but it gave me a sense of that direction in terms of being very meticulous in sorting out problems, and being able to read in between the lines, and studying people, studying history, because when you get into those types of careers, it's a part of your job to study people, to look in various places in history and even in the present. And one thing led to another. I got into studying the scriptures as well, and the scriptures is like a history. It is a history book, but it's a history book full of metaphors and parables. for one to study and for one to research and investigate. Because I've had so many people, and it can, look, it can be difficult. It can be very difficult, so much so because of the context that it's put in by the English, and how they transcribe from the original scriptures, which were not in English. So they confounded it in a way that for the ordinary average reader who does not study or investigate or look more deeper into a subject in terms of how it's laid out, you know, whether it be literal or not, because some people take things literal. Like, I'm gonna give an example in the scripture. It talks about a leviathan in the Bible. You know how many people actually think that there's some type of sea monster that's in the ocean with no proof? You know, and they literally took that, you know, for it being some type of sea monster. I'm seeing it all over social media now. And, you know, unless someone comes with concrete evidence, and I've seen all of the Bigfoot videos and no one's come up, you know, to say that the mainstream media hasn't come up to say. I mean, look, I'm not looking for no sea monsters. I didn't take that part of the scriptures literal. I almost did it one time until I started to look deeper. See, there could be a giant in a little thing. What do you mean by that? There could be someone who's like 5'2", and they have amassed a wealth in terms of being able to manage. Okay, a thunderbolt sighting. All right, sister. All right, yeah, that's real. That's real. So, someone who has the ability to manage a huge department store, someone who people would look at and say, that's the owner? He's little in stature physically, but in mind and in spirit, he's a giant. You see how things are taken out of context with people now. I'm going to give an example of Leviathan another way. When you look at the U.S. Navy or some of the navies around the world, they could be considered a Leviathan to, say, an island, a tropical island, who has no more than maybe 1 million people, 2 million people on the island, and they have an army of less than 100,000. And they have a navy that only has one ship, maybe 2 ships. And they would look at the navies of the greater empires as a giant monster or a Leviathan. And this is what a lot of people miss. I have had, well, disagreements, but some minor words that were exchanged about the Bible and its authenticity, because there is a lot to be critical about because of King James and his 54 scholars that were involved in this transcription of the Bible from its original scriptures, which were in Aramaic, Hebrew, and Arabic. And they added and they took out. Well, if you're an investigator, a critical investigator at that, meaning discernment of mind, discernment, you know, it's a word to sort between that which is truth and that which is a lie. You know, knowing that our 400-year journey here in North America, we have been lied to. Black people, brown people, red people, yellow people. We have been lied to by this religious institution called Christianity with regards to our brother Yeshua, who they call Jesus, don't matter, same brother. We have been lied to upon layers. So much so that the arguments, I see them all over the place. People are arguing, well, we know he wasn't white, he was black. You know, he was brown. or this, that, and the other. You know, I mean, those arguments, however warranted and justified, because we have been lied to for so long. Of course, the truth can stay hidden, but for so long. So we have to look and recognize that those now who are critical in their thinking and do their due diligence and their research can, ultimately say, well, we know he wasn't white. We know he didn't have blonde hair. We know he didn't have, blue eyes and this, that, and the other. And he wasn't of a European persuasion. So, of course, that spirals because the Bible has 66 books in it. And how much have they lied? Whoo, boy, that's a $64,000 question, isn't it? How much have they lied throughout the book? It's so much intrusion that they have, put in purposely to cause confusion. And here the peoples who are descended down from those areas. And I look at this, black and brown people, look, we don't just come from one part of the earth. We come from all over this globe. And the best parts, that's why if you look, you find in places in Africa and the Caribbean, the Sun Belt, you'll find the darker peoples. We existed on the best parts of the planet. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. White folks can come from Europe, and not even there. It really came from the Caucasus Mountains. Hence, that's why they call Caucasians. But, that's neither here nor there. We have to really understand what was the motivation behind all of this confusion that we have today and why it matters now. And people have to recognize that in order for these people to rule, and they have ruled us now for millennia, they had to lie. Because there's no way you're going to get a people who come from God himself, who are divine in nature. So what? What do you mean by divine? I'm gonna say it again. Divine in nature when they are in tune with the God that created us, and we are in balance. There's no way that they could have reduced us. Excuse my slang, niggas, bitches, and hoes, right? Or redskins. Me being black and native. All of these negative attributes that they have thrown at us from time immemorial, and that was to reduce our level of thinking through non-inspiration, was to not inspire but to destroy. So that is what they have accomplished, and therefore now here we are today in the year 2026. People are getting hold of truth, so much so that now the common denominator is that let's look past the color now of what our brother Yeshua was teaching in those days 2,000 years ago. Let's try to break down the metaphors and the parables to those less understood. And especially with the times that we're in now in the book of Revelations and Exodus. And I tell people all the time, we are in the midst of Exodus now with Pharaoh. The slaves are waking up. Pharaoh is alarmed. The numbers of the slaves have increased, almost, if not exceeded, his populations. And therefore, with the influx of black and brown migrants, that is why he is alarmed. Book of Exodus, it's in there. It's not talking about something that happened 2,000 years ago. It's referring to this time. Yes, it is a book of prophecy. It's talking about those who were kidnapped. And I say this because there are some people who are saying black people were always here. A segment of the black community, yes, we have been here, but not all black people. Look, we speak different tongues. People have to recognize and understand that We are not monolithic in our languages. Languages. I'm going to say it again. Languages. We are diverse in language, culture, creativity, music, tradition, celebration. I don't understand how people don't understand that. Black people who have been here for the past 400 plus years as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. People want to come on and argue with me all day about, oh, there was no miss me with that, and please keep it moving. Because I'm 59 years old this May. Miss me with that BS. I've been studying history long before some of y'all were born. So anyway, yeah. So the evidence shows that some of our ancestors were brought here from Africa, so-called Africa. And then, of course, there were those that were here, black people that were here. Of course, it wasn't mentioned. And if it was mentioned, it was a secret, because the white man couldn't be responsible for giving the truth about black people being here and free and living, not just free, but building civilizations, towns, villages, and things of that nature over time when the Spanish conquistadors. Now look, the indigenous peoples didn't call themselves Indians. You can go down south. There are some tribes to this day that don't call themselves Indians, and they look at you like you crazy and they're ready to fight you. Well, now why is that? They never call themselves Indians because they didn't identify themselves as that. There were different peoples that were coming to North America at different times, from the Mongols, the Siberians, to the Indians who were exiled from India over 16,000 years ago because they worshiped Buddha when they were Muslims. I said, well, wait, you trying to say Muslims came here? Well, they were exiled, and they ran across the Bering Straits, and some of them mixed with the Mongols and Siberians, because that Bering Straits was icy cold, and some of them wouldn't have survived, and more than likely some of them, or a lot of them, didn't survive that walk, that trek, because of being exiled across the Bering Straits into what's called today northern California, and the what do you call that, the Nez Perce area, where the Nez Perce indigenous peoples, if you ever seen them, some of them are crispy dark skin, straight hair, curly hair, and if you look at some of the powwows that indigenous people have, we always face east when we enter into the powwow circle, or the east gate. We always face east. Muslims face east when they pray and bow. So there are still residuals left that most of us do not recognize to this day, because, of course, what does time do? And forgetfulness, right? Forgetfulness, time. And when you are exiled, the bottom line there is that you more than likely are going to either be hurt. Of course, you have to leave a home that you've only known all your life, and then be uprooted. And you're going to hate where you're leaving because you're being exiled, or you're gonna be upset and want to go back, but you can't. And you might carry some of your culture with you, more than likely. I've seen some of the Siberians today. If you look at them and some of the beaded chokers that they wear and headbands, they look like some of the indigenous peoples. Now, you hear black people talking about, oh, these are $5. Man, miss me with that BS, man. Miss me with that BS. I mean, did they enslave black people? Huh? And some of the tribes, if you look real close, that were involved here in North America with the enslavement of black people, they look more white than they did tan, brown, or anything else. Now, as far back as we want to go, because the indigenous peoples have been in North America for over 16,000 years. Black people over 20,000 or more. Brother who was down in South Carolina digging up bones found black settlements in South Carolina, my home state of where my people, South and North Carolina, my people's from. But I digress. I don't want to get too far off into that. So, yeah, some tribes were involved in the slave trade. Some were not as not the slave trade, but the adopting of slavery. Slavery in its original form prior to chattel slavery wasn't likened unto the white man's practice of slave. People need to get this thing clear, because back in Africa they did have indentured slavery as well. How do you think some black folk got over here to North America? Not saying that all tribes were involved. There were some kingdoms that were involved in the sale of their brothers who were given to white people because they had debts, and the kingdoms, they did not know that the white man was, I've repeated this before. So a lot of us who don't do their due diligence and research, and some of us either bots or just caught up, in ignorance, because what they're doing is they're trying to lay groundwork for divide and conquer for the system that oppresses us, so that we'll be at each other's throats, meaning Africans, meaning indigenous peoples, black peoples, Hispanic. They want to see all of us fighting. And guess what? Boy, I tell you, what I'm watching on social media right now, it pains my heart, and it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting, because, before you open your mouth, know that what you're speaking of for a fact. Now, there were people who are going to come out with receipts and say, oh yeah, well, I know this, and, I know that, and fine. But what is the ultimate lesson behind all of this? Is some of our people have sold their souls, and we still see that today. Some people will sell their souls for money. From who? The puppet master, and we know who that is. Don't play with me. They'll sell their souls for money, or a piece of parcel of land. Some of our indigenous families did that. In Africa, they did it. After the white man conquered Africa, please. Everywhere he's gone, he set his foot. He's caused nations to go astray or in error, conflict. That's why Christianity in those lands over there in Africa to this very day, they got problems, and they full of conflict. So miss me with that, because it's unfounded. There's no true grounding, and truthful information with how these people are they're really laying the groundwork, again, for violence. And only an untrained eye, and this goes back to the scriptures, when you start to take things literal and you don't look behind the deeper meaning of a thing, then you are easily caught up in that which they are attempting to do, which is to deceive you, to make you think something else opposite of what it really is, and then you get caught up in the madness, and then your blood pressure starts to boil, because you start to believe in that madness, and therefore you're looking at your brother, you're looking at your sister, wherever they come from on the earth. You hear what I said? Wherever they come from on the earth. So, and this goes to Africans, this goes to indigenous peoples, this goes to Black Americans, whatever you want to call yourself, whether the black, the brown, the red, and the yellow peoples. That's what I'm speaking to. Whatever you subscribe to, it's irrelevant. We're not supposed to disrespect anyone regardless of where they come from, or even their color. Even white folks, we're not supposed to be disrespectful. Now, when you being disrespected, of course, that's a whole nother issue. I'm not going to absolve those who were responsible for our demise and continue to perpetuate the lies that we still see to this very day, to cause a divide and conquer. Now it's up to us with a brain, those of us who have a brain and a mind, to see the same politics that they've been playing on our people for centuries. And so many of us still can't see. So that's the correlation and also that's more or less the connection that I'm making between the scriptures, and a lot of the metaphors and parables that our brother Yeshua. That's why he said, "You'll know a fruit by its roots," you know, or a tree by a tree and a fruit by its roots. And how old are our people? Oh my God, it's time immemorial. That's how old we are. That's how long we've been on this planet. You know, I've had okay, yeah. So you're welcome, Chalugi. You're welcome. This is, this has been bothering me again. I always think very critically before I start to speak on certain subjects, and that's why it's been a while since I've been on here. My job is to try to create awareness and understanding. Human beings have been led astray by a wicked system, and easily led astray, especially when you're operating below the waist, and don't think critically. This is a problem. So it's like many other people who are duped so easily, and do not think critically. These people have to be checked. It's almost like the Trump administration. You think about the millions of people who who put him in office. Now they're probably beating their heads up against the wall. I mean, were they that dumb? Yes, absolutely. Were they that racist? Yes, absolutely. Were they that hateful? Yes, absolutely. Now that it's turned upon them, their thinking has changed only because they are the recipients of the pain now. What goes around comes around. That's karma, baby. You don't get away from that. But we always know that they say when white folks catch a cold, darker peoples, we get the flu. So those who have not, and I have been telling people this for years, stock up, prepare, get yourself ready. The God that I know is here. And he allows me to speak this way to you. I come of no way by that the Spirit of God works through me when I'm speaking to you. And I give thanks and praise to him and him alone. So our people have to recognize that again, we're being manipulated, we're being played. So therefore, what is at the end of all of this now? Well, we're at the end. There are a lot of people who see plainly that something is not right, something is amiss. It looks like something big getting ready to happen. Those who are looking on their TV screen, they're seeing this war. This is Armageddon, baby. It's Armageddon. This is the final war spoken of. It's the final war. Can it be averted? I pray. There is a part in the scripture that there's an alternative ending. That's in the book of Revelations. And that only depends on the people. And here is the part that most people miss, is that even if we get this regime out, who's to say all of those racist white people are going to change that supported Trump? All right, okay, they says 80 million, 78 million, 80 million. If half of that is racist, half, 40 million, that's a lot of people. Are they ever going to change? Look. After 400 years, so many people were asleep about racism in this country. I remember running into some West Indians. Oh, racism is a thing of the past. Doesn't exist anymore. And me, I'm from the Bronx. I'm from New York. And I tell you this right now, racism has always been in this country. Malcolm X warned us. He said, if you south of the Canadian border, you down south. I've experienced physical violence with white people back in the 1980s, just walking home with my homeboys, minding our business. Nigga, get out of here. So, I mean, after 400 years, and these people still acting up, we still getting lynched. So that was another issue I wanted to speak on. Notice that the lynchings are up in the country. I wonder why that is. There's so many of our people now on social media, and I want y'all to hear me on this. Pay very, very, very careful attention on what I'm about to say here. That our people are online being braggadocious about our talents. We are a very talented people. Song and dance, politics. We had our our 10th black president. That's another time for, another day for that. 10th black president. And we are constantly being braggadocious in some ways because we're always trying to prove ourselves, and it's all over social media. Well, white people, especially racist white people, they have what's called a very fragile heart in their esteem, especially now. You hear them say, if you listen carefully, they're saying now, black people are surpassing us. We don't want them to surpass us. Wow, isn't that something? Haven't they always been like that when they've seen our progress? Black Wall Street, Seneca Village, Tulsa, Oklahoma. What was the other one? Rosewood, Florida, where they saw black progress. What did they do? They burnt us down. They killed us by the tens, the 20s, and even in the hundreds. They cannot deal with their own envy and their own jealousy. It causes them to have a rage. Am I speaking about all white people? No. But as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad once said, it doesn't take it doesn't take an army to change the world. One will do. And now we have instances of white boys, running up into stores, killing black people, brown people, running up into churches. Y'all better pay attention to this because this thing is going to increase. Because we're dealing with a satanic people. Their hearts are very fragile. They cannot take much when it comes to their opposition or our opposition to white supremacy. They believe that they are superior, some of them. Wow, hold on 1 second. That's my daughter. Hold on. Oh, sorry about that, guys. My daughter calling me saying some white man at the door at my house. Oh, my goodness. Got me like borderline getting ready to jet off and head home. So look, you got to understand that the hatred comes through jealousy and envy. Really, that's what's at the core of their problems with us. And then some of them actually believe that they are superior, yet they have to get rid of us because of the other issue. That's the numbers game. They're being told, and they have been told, that the numbers of the darker peoples have increased. Remember Biden said about the Hispanics, that we're going to have to work with them because they're going to surpass white people. And I don't believe that. Black people Every time you turn around, you see a black woman pregnant. So you miss me with that. But they will believe that the Hispanic community is the larger population. All right. So therefore, that plays upon their psyche that they are being replaced. Just like when you had down in, I think, in Virginia some years ago when when you had those white boys with those torches, those tiki torches, talking about Jews will not replace us. Huh. Yeah, right. I mean, as though out of that crowd, all of them white men, you mean to tell me that you could tell that all those white men were just purely white, some of them weren't Jewish? Because last I checked, Jewish people are white. And some of them do fit in. Let me give you an example of that. In the 1980s, there's this high school in the Bronx called Jane Addams. They found out one of the former principals was a Grand Dragon from the Ku Klux Klan, and he was Jewish. Where I'm going with that, right? So, that lets you know that we are in a situation where these people could come at us at all different directions and we don't know who's who. Well, one thing remains is that white people are to be looked at as being untrustworthy in some regards. They have not been authentic when it comes to teaching our people history in the schools, with jobs, businesses. We have been left behind in so many regards. So we have to be critical again with them. But they are going to continue the slaughtering of our people. Be on guard. And I ain't saying all white people are like this. Those who might come on here, because I've had some people come on here, or you just talking about, no, you didn't listen to my entire video. Come on here talking about, I'm speaking about all white. Did I say all white folks? No, I did not. So for those who are in the white community and are of that mindset, our people waking up. So you better watch your back as well, because we're not going to tolerate this bullshit any longer. And that's another problem that we got. We're too trusting. We're too goddamn trusting. I mean, 400 years hasn't taught us anything. It's a doggone shame that here we are in 2026 and we're still divided and being allowed to be divided even more through ignorance and not critical discernment. We must have a critical, discerning mind in order to overcome these bastards, because they're using the Jedi mind tricks on us. That's exactly what's going on here. So again, I thank God for allowing me to come before you again to drop some knowledge, to enlighten my brothers and sisters. Hopefully that you'll take these words in kind and take the appropriate and necessary steps to move forward, because there are some hard times coming. We're approaching, but we're not quite there yet. Some of us are, but I beg my brothers and sisters, listen, get prepared. Water ain't always going to be on. I know where I live, we had a water main break for 4 days a couple of months ago. No water for 4 days. I had water in my house. I had water stocked up. So this is really important, that we take the time to prepare. There is a scripture in Exodus that says, because the Israelites did not prepare themselves for the destruction, that they ate their children. I've spoken to many people. It's all, oh, you're welcome, Chalugi, you're welcome, sister. It's required of me, because I hold on to this information. I gotta let it out, and I have to speak. or I'm going to be held accountable. I'm like one of God's little messengers. I have to get this information out there. So our people were so caught up in that we did not prepare. Caught up in the world, and then we didn't prepare for not even a rainy day, torrents, a torrent, and the torrent is famine, hunger, drought, and that it says it warned us that we would eat our children. See, I've spoken to a lot of people. I'm not going to eat my child. What do you think they make so many zombie movies? You think that's by chance? Every time we turn around, they got a new zombie movie out. What's that about? What is that all about? That's about getting your mind programmed to eat people. It's a historical fact that people who have been in situations like that, eating people to survive. Whether alive or dead, or dying. And your children, you say you wouldn't do it? Most of us haven't faced hunger like that. That's the issue, is that your brain has a switch. I have to live. So it's incumbent upon us to procure rations to get through the hard times, because God warned us of these days. We're going to go through a hard period. Faith ain't going to do it alone. I hear people, my God is this, my God is that. But God to build a boat. Did he not? He told him to build a boat because the flood was coming. He knew that anybody else who did not adhere to this would die, because they didn't have faith and they did not take the appropriate steps to secure their lives. So Exodus is a warning, a prophetic warning. So the prophetic warnings were really to avert what was foreseen to come. Did the Trump administration and them and their clergy, did they communicate? Maybe, maybe not. If they did the Trump administration adhere to the warnings? Because this is what the scriptures warned? Or were some of them thinking, oh, I don't believe in that stuff, or that stuff happened thousands of years ago? So what if it happened thousands of years ago? So what? Just give an example. Listen to me. When mommy and daddy make mistakes in their younger lives and they grow up, they have children, and some of those mistakes they were able to come out of and live their lives. They survived whatever it was. It depends on what it was, but it was something that they realized that they see their own children going down that same path that they once were in their lives. I did not tell you, boy, if you don't go to school, you're going to end up in the streets. If you don't have an education, you can't do nothing with your life. I don't teach my children to go to school, get a job. I don't do that. Didn't I tell you that if you hang out with those ragamuffins on the street, you're going to end up in dead or in jail? So how you know? I've seen it, my friends. So something that might have happened maybe years in their younger lives, they see their own children going down the same path. So what do? You warn them. It's just that simple. And if they take heed, fine. If they don't, well, things could go two ways. Either they learn from it, or they either get killed, or they end up somewhere they don't want to be, homeless. These are the lessons and wisdom in life. Right. There you go. And if you don't have the knowledge and the understanding and the wisdom to see that, how can you teach your children better? And that they will fall amongst the same stumbling blocks that was laid before his parents when they were younger. Because not everyone makes it out. I know, I've seen that with friends of mine growing up. So whether it was 2,000 years ago, doesn't matter. Human beings have a commonality of making the same dumb mistakes over and over and over. Now we got leaders. They're not making mistakes. They're willfully involved in the destruction through their belief that they are supremely better than everyone else, bombing people relentlessly, killing children, no souls, no hearts. They ain't got no soul, no heart. And doing the same thing their forebears did. Invading, now they're sending troops to deploy. Invading, what? Invading other people's lands. Doesn't that sound familiar? Very familiar. My memory is very good, especially when it comes to shit like that, excuse my language, that we should not forget, lest we stumble and fall, or our children stumble and fall. We hear these people are committing the same crimes. Now white people up in arms. We didn't want no more war. We didn't want that. No, you just wanted to hurt black and brown people. Now it's jumped over and bit you on the behind. So that lesson, sometimes you don't come back from. Will we come back from this lesson, this final lesson? The War of Armageddon has already started. Armageddon is the entire hemisphere of the planets at conflict with each other. Something that this devil created. And when I say this devil, I'm talking about this cabal. Old Trumpy couldn't do it by himself. He's a half an idiot. And arrogance will always get you somewhere that you do not want to be. And stupidity. Arrogance and stupidity. And that's exactly where we are right now. So, with the military, with these nuclear bombs, and listen, I say this with the utmost confidence. God's chosen people are here in North America. And he said he's not going to let not one bomb hit this place. So it says in the book of Revelations that the beast would attempt to scorch a third part of the earth. Scorch. What is that? Isn't that heat? Scorch a third part of the planet. What is that but nuclear bombs? And that he sent his angels to the four corners. So the white man is seeing what they call UFOs all over the place. Can't catch them. Catching them coming out of the oceans. Catching them coming out of volcanoes. But our people think, because we've been to the movies maybe one too many times watching Will Smith and Independence Day, they got us believing they're aliens. And yet they call Mexicans aliens. Which one is it? Make up your mind. You're not confusing me, but a lot of people, So Hollywood got our brains programmed to think lizards, people, scaly skin. When it tells you throughout the scriptures, and this is how this bastard has manipulated the minds of the people so much that we cannot discern truth to lie. As it says in the book of Genesis, God created and fashioned a wheel that was a half a mile by a half a mile. I said a wheel. a cylindrical object, tangible, physical. Book of Joshua saw God coming out of the clouds on what looked like some sort of vessel, and he was a bronze complexion. Book of Ezekiel saw a wheel coming in from the north country with smoke and fire round about. Hello, what does that sound like? Will Smith's Independence Day? Didn't they use that scripture to deceive you? Smoke and fire round about. And as it hovered close to the ground, he looked up and saw with amazement what looked like a man coming out of this vessel. And he fell to his knees, said, "Oh my God," and started to pray. In the book of Daniel looked, and a wheel, behold, whipping at lightning speeds from east, west, north to south. You could draw up these scriptures if you look at the old King James Version, the KJV 1611. Don't get the newer versions because they keep omitting and changing the wording. They're doing that because they know we're catching up. Those of us who have a discernible mind. And on that note, my brothers and sisters, I'm going to say peace and blessings. Donada, kohoni, anigido. And until we meet again, I love you. And you take care. If Sister Shelly, you got any questions, you ask them now. And yeah. If you're still there, sister. Okay, well, I'm about to log off, so until next time. Oh, I appreciate you too, sister. I appreciate you too. Thank you for your time. We shall definitely, please keep making videos. Okay. Oh, trying to turn this thing off. Getting old. Can't remember how to video.